everybody is too busy thinking about themselves to think about you at all. Nobody is thinking about you anywhere, everywhere. So go forth and just like,
do the
things. Just do the things. Do the hard things. The hard things are where the gold is. Yeah, yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
It's beautiful to have you here, Ron Montgomery. And you are one of the first guests at the Human CV show, project, channel, whatever it's going to turn into. And I want to thank you for your time and for your curiosity.
Well, I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Jen.
Beautiful. So today we will have a little journey. We will go through the human CV that you have prepared in preparation for our chat today. And in this human CV, we will see a few percentages that came out of personality tests, and they tell me something about your inner world and not just all the career journeys and, fancy titles or companies you may have accumulated on the way. So I would love to start right off with your sustainable development goals. So the ones you chose to be at the top, interesting for you or, most valuable are quality education, and then also industry, innovation, and infrastructure. When you selected those two, what was something on your mind? What was something that you were like, yeah, I really want to build something towards that goal in the future?
The reason I resonated with those was probably, the way you phrase it right there is giving me some other thoughts about that. But originally what leaned me towards this was all of our lives, potentially, we've heard a lot of there's a lot of charities and there's a lot of movements, and we have, the philosophy of like, let's feed the world and let's do that. And yet along the way, it seems like we don't make a lot of progress on making the world a better place. It can, a lot of it doesn't really sink deep, and it can tends, I think, to feel a lot like we're trying to give fish with all the logistics of giving a fish halfway around the world, without ever actually teaching people to fish.
Right.
And one of the best, and this fits with the education and it fits with the infrastructure, one of the best proposed solutions I ever read that made the most sense to me was the access to power. So if you have access to, to take for an example, I'm not sure how it was in New Zealand, but in Canada, everything was all about, that time of Bono and Feed Africa and, things of that nature. The access to power and reliable power means that you can have water pumps, you can have access to fresh water, you capture more time in your day, you can have light at night. That then frees people up for better education, for personal betterment, for personal empowerment, to then make their own destiny instead of just being at the end of receiving a fish. They then become fishermen or whatever the equivalent is in their life. And so as I was having a look at that, those are just things that really resonated with me on a logical and emotional and an optimistic way of what the future potentially could look like and what a possible path to a better world looks like.
Oh, that makes so much more sense. Thanks. Because when I look at those two, I also can think of, how can we make education more innovative, or how can we have a better infrastructure to receive information or teach it, and make that circle just be more effortless and more flowing. And when I looked at some of the numbers that came out of your DISC profile and the Big Five, or some people call it ocean test, they're very well-researched personality or character assessments, there were two things that really stood out, and probably they also stood out to you when you look just at the numbers. So we have in your DISC profile, the compliance sits at only 5%, and in the Big Five, it is mirrored by what they call conscientiousness, 1%. So for the viewers or the listeners who haven't been exposed to that, what it pretty much means is you're a rebel. So that is coupled with an extremely high number of extroversion and imagination and influence. So you're not only a rebel, but you're a very chatty rebel, and someone who can chat to others and make them rebel with them. So however you want to share little stops along your career journey or your life path, feel free to say, I did this for 5 years and that straight after school and so on and so forth. But how did it show up that you were influencing others to be a rebel with you?
Oh, what a brilliant question.
We've got a couple hours for today. So.
Yeah. Do you mind if I take a sidestep from the career for a moment and talk
Absolutely
about basically
not.
the progression? Lovely.
All yours.
So I enjoy that low conscientiousness because it actually how it fits into the greater story is I believe somewhere that I show up that way is a process of choices rather than a inbuilt orientation. And I don't understand the DISC profile very well, and perhaps there's reason to say that I've got the wrong end of it. But I always, when I look at my teen years, because of my parents owning bars and restaurants, I was constantly mixing with older people, and at the same time, I had my father, very charming person, very very influential person, very chatty person, all of those things he said, and it was a kind of a superpower of his, and it moved the needle, and as I had not yet acquired those skills, how that sort of miming or that influence affected me was that I was very much influenced towards being a people pleaser.
Right.
To my detriment.
Yeah.
Very, very often to my detriment, and not necessarily to their betterment. When I was 18, I did my overseas experience, my OE, which is not in Canada like it is here. It's, I think 25% or some wild number like that of Kiwis will go and do an OE with that label. In Canada, much, much lower. And the amount of people that even make it across the water to Europe and the UK, very low. I went to France at 18.
Okay.
Didn't speak the language. There was a family friend that set me up, had found me an apartment and employed me just doing lunches at his restaurant.
Right.
And there's a lot of stories that come out of could come out of that. But the short of it was that I found myself about a month in, where I've gone from my hometown of 200,000 people to a city of 11 million in Greater Paris, right? So I think it was 4 million inner. And for the first time, there's another saying I like. It's like you can never really know who you are until you've gone 600 miles from anyone who knows you, because you don't have that external influence of somebody putting you in a box and how they know you and how they see you. And I've always really loved that. It fuels some of my passions for travel. Tangent off. Yeah. I'm there, and I'm realizing that if I want to have the best time I possibly can there, I have to actually go out and capture the moment. I have to actually get past my people-pleasing nature, the shyness I had at the time, and I had to become a person of influence. And I had to believe that the good intentions that I bring, and the morality and the ethics that I try and sometimes fail, but generally succeed at leading my way, that conscientiousness actually kind of got a little bit like, I don't always know from my perspective what the best thing for you is, but I know that what I'm doing is right. And so I feel like that influenced my my conscientiousness a little bit. Yes. At least that's sort of how I'm looking at it.
It's your story.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't it be true?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, whatever that truth thing is, it's true for me.
Oh, we can do a lot of tangents on that one, because you talked to me about Anthony de Mello as well.
Yes.
But let's keep with that story for a little bit longer, because then you moved on and did other things that required you to actually think outside the box, use all that very high score. You have 93% in the imagination bubble, which is a lot. And your agreeableness, like how much you will actually, please people, has dropped significantly, probably compared to 18-year-old Ron. Yeah. So how was that useful for you? So being able to imagine and, find the loopholes or do the outside the box thinking.
What that makes me think of, just as a response to what you said, is having to do with actually growing empathy. And I feel like the development of emotional intelligence really requires going beneath the surface. So being that agreeableness dropping is about getting below that surface, because you can agree with that surface level and not understand what's happening under the surface with people. And the fact that we all are on this journey to figure things out means that nobody's actually figured anything out yet. Wow. And so there's a certain amount of questioning and trying to figure out things along the way that gets lost in translation between people. Do you want to ask that question again? Because I've actually lost my train of thought.
And my train of thought already started to be triggered into another direction. So that's when two NFs, if everybody is watching right now, has a look at their own 16 personalities one. So NF in the middle is intuition and feeling. So we will go on tangents all day long. I wondered how, your imagination and your sense of, let's break the law here, or let's find a shortcut there, has enabled you throughout your career to find different solutions, or to maybe do something that's a bit more unusual.
Okay, well.
If not, the tangent I was going to take you on was about uncertainty, but we can go there.
So the best example I can think of was before my travel career began, but when I was still becoming the traveler I am today, I had an opportunity to go down to Panama and run a restaurant and a nightclub.
Okay.
And so I had been, in the years leading up to that, so this is now, I'm just shy of my 25th birthday when I went down. So the years from when I returned from Paris and I worked in my hometown, I actually started developing sort of a unique niche skill set where I would go into a restaurant or a bar that had a new owner, especially if the owner was maybe somebody who didn't have a great deal of experience but had the passion and interest. It's the thing they always wanted to do. And I would go in as their right-hand person, and I would basically set up and orchestrate the entire front end. So from training staff to optimizing systems to figuring out what great is, that was what I did for a number of years. And that led to me being headhunted to go down to Panama. Now, this was the ultimate test of that creativity and certainly perseverance, and because all of the things that we would normally take for granted, such as clean drinking water, reliable energy, knowing that that food that you're buying from a market is safe to then cook and professionally present to people, was remarkable. Much less even culturally, what we consider our standards of service and attention there was no baseline for them in those sort of environments. And so it was an extremely challenging situation. And we had to tackle it all these different ways. And the best example I can have is we figured out we couldn't get produce at all, much less necessary safe meat and fish. We would occasionally at the restaurant, which is right over the water, right over the water on a pier. It was great. Boats could come and they'd be right in the restaurant. Yeah. It was so cool. But we would have, somebody at 10 in the morning, we'd have a local come up in his boat, canoe up, and he'd be like, oh, do you want to buy these fish? And he'd be like, I would love to be able to buy your fish, but I don't know if you caught that at 4 in the morning and at, 90% humidity for 6 hours, it's been now sitting in your boat and is no longer safe to serve.
One wrong decision and you get shut down.
Well, there wasn't even somebody to shut down. There wasn't even that, right? Because everybody's getting poisoned everywhere. Food poisoning is common. We want it to be the place that's not happening.
I clearly have never opened a restaurant in Panama.
I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but what we ended up figuring out, and this was the most unusual but fantastic employer I've ever had. So he was great with the back end. But what we didn't have was what we figured out between us was that on Sunday night, if we take the work truck and we take it down, sorry, I'm out on an island, by the way. So we take it down to the port and we put the vehicle on the ferry. And we take turns, so 1 week would be me, 1 week would be Rob, and then whoever was going would then go to sleep and sleep till about 4 in the morning, and then would jump on a high-speed speedboat and meet the ferry on the mainland. Take the truck off, drive 4 hours through the mountain to the city of David, which was about 900,000 people, and they would have the equivalent of a Costco. It was a different brand, but it was Costco.
Weekly groceries trip.
Weekly grocery trip. We'd drive into town, park it up, sleep for 3 or 4 hours, go to Costco in the hour before it closed, load everything up into coolers and chili bins, and there was 1 week I decided I wanted a TV because I didn't have one in my apartment, so load a TV in there because it's Costco, you can get it all.
The speed would just bum, 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 bum.
Yeah, totally. And then back 4 hours over the mountain, drop the vehicle at the ferry, take a speedboat across, and then pick it up the next morning, Tuesday morning. And every week we had to do that.
Wow.
Now the thing is that that, you think, okay, well, that's not a sustainable business model. Absolutely not. But it was always a bridge to another solution.
Yeah.
And it allowed us to do, for the 5 months we were doing that, it allowed us to do what nobody else could do. And there was no competition because we were just where they could not and would not go. And so that was imagination, it was problem solving, and it was, this is the box that everybody operates in. And it does not have to be the box that we operate in. We can do things differently. We just have to imagine what it is.
How long ago roughly was that? What year?
20 years ago. So
20
2005.
years ago. Do you know what my pattern matching brain is picking up on? 20 years ago, you literally did what you're now saying, these are my sustainable development goals. You gave quality education in an industry like restaurant and hospitality, and you innovated their infrastructure. What a story, yeah.
That's a bit spooky.
My brain does these things.
Lovely.
So that's fascinating. And the tangent I wanted to take you on earlier before we actually caught that loop back into this story time again was everything was uncertain. So first of all, 18-year-old Canadian shy boy of a very influential and chatty dad changed his approach, went to Paris and had to be in a French-speaking environment. I'm not sure if you grew up in the French-speaking side of Canada, so there was the language swap. Then going to Panama was another language swap and cultural complete crash. Like what is going on? Not crash, clash, cultural clash. That's what I'm trying to say. And so most people would say, my goodness, that's the most uncertain thing ever. I don't know if that restaurant's going to work. I don't know if I will gel with Rob, who ran the Panama restaurant and was very passionate about his thing, right? Just imagining this here. And so most people would freak out. They hate uncertainty. They say, oh, if I don't have security, if I don't have predictability, it just makes my heart go crazy and I feel anxiety. You seem to enjoy it, or did you learn to enjoy it, or are you still not enjoying it, but you're navigating through it? How do you deal with that?
Great question. So I suppose one thing that occurred to me as you were talking there was that I think with uncertainty, uncertainty and risk get bundled together so closely that, when I was working with Rob and we were dealing with all this chaotic stuff, and it was what ended up happening there is by simply working with somebody who, like, I still to this day highly regard as the greatest employer I've ever had. He was phenomenal, and even though he had lots of faults, but by having really good communication with him at that time of what the expectations were, what my so what are my boundaries, and finding that there weren't really many boundaries as long as he was kept in the loop, that it then went, I can actually de-risk. So risk comes out of it. So there's uncertainty, but there isn't a personal risk. There isn't a threat. There wasn't a feeling of, is my employment at risk? Is my livelihood at risk? Is my body at risk? Yeah. All of those were separated, and I could look at them as two separate entities. And I think in many ways that's persisted, because there is uncertainty elements now that will come in my life where they are intermingled, and the uncertainty does pair with risk, and my approach to that can be different.
Of course.
But when I can separate that, then it changes the metrics a lot.
I don't think I've ever heard someone really teasing out the differences between that. And you're right, usually we clump it all together and have a risk assessment, which also means there's uncertainty, we must fight this. But no, actually there's a different levels of how much does it impact certain aspects of my livelihood or my reputation or whatever is paramount at this moment or time in your life when you're assessing it.
Certainty is very risky too.
Oh yeah, and limiting. If you don't risk anything, that's the biggest risk ever. Yeah, beautiful. I would love to take this story about risk, uncertainty, and all these into your people books or courses that shaped you. You answered that question in the Human CV with one is The Alchemist, which is in my Human CV also. It's one of my all-time favorite books, which is funny enough because I read 99% non-fiction books, but The Alchemist is a fiction book that really spoke to me. And you also wrote down the book Awareness. Pick your favorite or the one you feel right now you want to talk a bit more about. So imagine the viewer has never heard of these books. What spoke to you? How did they change you? What stood out? Give me some context, please.
I think I'll talk about The Alchemist.
Okay.
And the reason that The Alchemist resonates with me, it was 24 years ago I first picked it up.
Wow.
And it's the story of a young boy named Santiago, and he's in the Andalusian countryside of Spain. And it's a very short book, and it's my daughter's 7 now, and when she's 10, I'll give her this book, and she'll be able to read it and understand it, and it'll be lovely. But that being said, 21-year-old me picking it up for the first time, I read it in a single sitting. It was 174 pages, I think, and it was one of the lots of things, but one of the things it was for me, it was an example that brilliance doesn't have to be complex or complicated, or doesn't have to make you think more than experience. Lots of excellence does, but this is an example of, the simplistic messages and the multiple layer was fantastic. And so this boy Santiago, he has a vision of a treasure. He has a destiny calling, and for him, it's the universe is reaching out and saying, this is an opportunity to change your life. And he did, and he went from things being cruisy to things being hard upon hard upon hard, and just like it was like every time he took 2 steps forward, he got knocked back 3 to then hopefully take 4 forward. But the person he was at the end of the book, from the skills he gained, there was languages, there was just a wide range of skills. All of it. And the amount of skills he made him such a capable person that even though he found the treasure that he had visions of, he truly was the treasure because of his journey. Like the skills he gained, the person he turned into was radically transformed, like alchemy, from lead to gold. And it was, and I've gone on with that book. I no longer read it every year, but for probably about 12 years, I read it every year, once a year. I think I've probably in 24 years read it 17 times. It's also a book that I bought 9 times because I've lent it out 13 times. And a lot of people don't give it back. So I bought it multiple times to give it out to people. And I just hope that they are spreading the love further. Otherwise, I'm going to have to bill them. No,
just get stakes in the publisher, Beautiful. That's such a good summary as well. And we're not giving any spoiler alerts to people who haven't read the book. We won't tell them what really happens at the end. But maktub.
Maktub.
Beautiful. I'd love to have a more, another sort of corridor around a very, usually very opposing camps. And when it comes to your section of main passions and interests, you throw a bunch of things in there, but there's 2 that are, especially in recent times, very opposing, or so it seems, but they are actually not. AI versus spirituality. So you mentioned, some main passions and interests. You've got AI, ethics, travel, cultures, like we heard, you've got background in the travel industry, history, spirituality, the search for meaning, dreams, and goals. How can we start marrying up, if possible? Should we even marry this up? The AI, the robot versus the woo-woo camp of spirituality. And what is it about those 2 that you find interesting or are fascinating?
All right, so starting with AI.
Just a casual question.
If we actually just start off with the AI, feeding back to what I said about uncertainty and risk as maybe not overlapping, but separating them, there's so much uncertainty about what AI is going to do, and there's so much risk about what it might do. But I also feel like you can put them together, and you're not wrong, but you can also separate it out, and you can look at things of going, I love uncertainty. I'm fine with it. And there's nothing more uncertain than something that's changing all the time, but at the same time, allowing channels of creativity to flourish. So, I can have 10,000 different sort of thoughts in a day, and I'd like to think that the majority of them are creative. Probably not. But the ability to capture them, AI allows me to capture and implement and test them at a scale that I could never do normally. So if I have an idea about something in travel and I go, oh, I wonder what this would look like, I can do some really quick research, and I can do some really quick mock-up, and I can do some, some A/B, some what do they call it, blue team, red team testing on it, all within, 30 minutes. And meanwhile, I've maybe opened up the voice app and I've rattled off, 55 different ideas that are, usually I get out of the shower and suddenly my head's, buzzing. And if I don't capture it in 10 minutes, it's gone. But I can just go right, and then it'll break them into different things according to my instruction. And it just enables me to lean into my strengths and what matters to me and chase curiosity and at a scale that it won't do. That being said, when we talk about risk, the biggest risk right now is trying to ride horses when everybody's getting into cars. So it's way more risky to turn your back on AI than it is to turn into it. It's even if you watch too much James Cameron and Terminator's Coming, even if that's the worst case scenario it is. And if you watch media, the sky's always falling. If you watch the news, we're all, they like the black pill, everybody. The reality is that we're, I would put, a 99% chance that we're going to end up somewhere in the middle of it all. It's not utopia, it's not dystopia, it's the continuation of the human condition with new skills and new abilities. And what it might end up doing for us, and what I'm hoping to personally implement, but so what it might do for us as a society is actually free up a little bit more time. We work more now than the farmers in the medieval ages.
Interesting.
Vastly more.
Oh, okay.
We work more hours now. I'm sure there's little pockets you could cherry pick little periods of time.
Industrial time was worse, but
probably the Industrial Revolution was maybe more, but again, that's a time of like exponential. The world's been doing that since the internet. It's now doing that again. We're working so many hours now, and the thing is that we're less free in many ways. We can travel, and you should travel. I'm an advocate for travel, but in so many ways we're economically and all these different ways we're not very free right now. So the pursuit of, but if AI does what I hope it'll do, and it'll give us more and more free time operating in our areas of genius, which is a whole other tangent I won't steer us off yet. But if it gives us more time to actually take a step back and go, where's this side of me as a person, as a mind and a heart, a soul, and a person moving through space and time towards what destination? I find like as we're so busy that we don't take time to do that. And once in a while, we're pretty sick as a society. Correlation, causation?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I don't have all the answers. I got a lot of questions. But the ability to take time and to really sort of ask those questions and think about that spirituality side, I think is, there's a window for people to do that more. As long as, of course, we're not completely devoured by the algorithms of Instagram and all that just suck up our time. But there's an opportunity for that. And when I notice myself over time that there's periods where it's like, oh, I feel like I'm feeling a bit lost. And when I pick up something like The Alchemist, which is an optimistic spiritual journey, I find, it wakes me up. And the other book, Awareness, is even more so. I won't go into that right now, but it's a book that's just really phenomenal that way.
Give me maybe a sentence on the book Awareness. Who should read it? A person who is currently...
I think, I think at some point in time, everybody should read it, just like I think everybody should go to India. Because it's something that you need to put yourself against. When I read it, and for me, it was at a bit of a dark time, and it kind of like cut through and spoke a true message to, the suffering of, in the more, we see this more in the Buddhist camp of religion, where all life is suffering because we are so attached and reliant on other things, and if we don't get it, we suffer, we hurt, and it creates this rolling desire and need and want for things, that just grows. It gets momentum, and so we're always leading yourself to more and more suffering. You know, you've got and people say, oh well, you go to the outbacks of India and you see these villagers and they're smiling and they're happy and they're delighted and they have nothing that we need. And you go, okay, so what do we actually need? We're lost along that journey, and awareness is a really good book to call it out. And to just give you some things to walk away and think about in a way that's it's a playful book. It's you can pick it. Probably 3 days a week at nighttime, I will randomly open a page, and it seems like
it just gives you the paragraph you need, right?
Right away. It's unreal. It's unreal. And so I think but that being said, I think it does require a little bit of openness, because it's going to challenge the way you look at things. And we have, perhaps it's that uncertainty and risk thing again, which it keeps coming up, but it will challenge the way that you look at the world. And if you are latched on so tight to your viewpoint, that it will only cause you suffering as well, because you're holding on to it. So I did share this with somebody close to me, who went about 8 pages, and just says, I think it's rubbish, I want nothing to do with it. I was like, okay.
Not your time yet.
Yeah.
We'll call you maybe in 5 years again.
That's right. That's right. It's like, okay, like I would, if it can do half for you what it did for me,
the world's going to get better.
Get in there. At a time. That's right. So it's not for everybody, but that, same thing. Again, I mentioned India, so I'll mention it again. It's like, that's a destination. I'm helping people go there. You will love it or you will hate it. There is no neutrality. There's no ability to just go, yeah, it was all right. It's like, no, it will change your life, or you will curse me for sending you there. Which is why I spent a lot of time going, do you know what it's like? I'm not just going to book you there. We're going to have a talk. And so that kind of thing. I find that book is quite similar.
Provocative. Extremes. I do love that. As a 6 planets in Scorpio, there's no middle ground for me. But then as somebody who meditates, there is middle ground. So the book has challenged you. May I challenge you on something?
Always.
So you just spoke on some principles of Buddhism and how the attaching or craving for certain pleasures is really hurting people in the long run. At the same time, you are in an industry that is luxury tourism. You take people on very extravagant and life-changing journeys. How can you, agree with both of those? How can you be able to say to people, yes, I do think, go on this journey, and at the same time you can say, be grateful with what you're having.
Sure.
Yeah, can we
Great.
get there?
Okay, there's a lot of different things to this though, right? So first of all, I talked about Paris and what that did for me. And that was travel. I had to go somewhere else. I had to see some things. And then Panama did it again, and I've got more. India, as you might have picked up, is one of them. And so the process of traveling and journeying, and each one was very different from the other. And I've been on luxury trips since, and I've been on, homestays, and I've done the spectrum. And each of them has their value and their benefit. At the same time, when I'm sitting across from, basically most of my clients, I'd say 80% of my clients sit in 2 buckets. They're either people that are, they are retired, and they have this bucket list. They have these things that they need to experience, and they need to, that's something, they say they need to. Need's a funny word, but I'm going to say need.
Desire.
Yeah, they've got the strong desire to do it, and they've got the impending feeling of mortality, and they've got the, I may not be able to, I'm 65, I may not be able to travel when I'm 70. And these are the things, the story in my mind, the story I've been telling myself, the vision that I have is that I need to do these in my life. So what is the way that they're best going to interface with that experience that they have? So, to look at travel, just simply the logistics and the economic stuff is, the more luxury travel means that they spend more money on making sure that things happen in the way that they need to happen. So
certainty again.
Well, I'll give you an idea. As Viking Cruise Lines, they've got, they themselves, they have some relationships with particular properties and castles in the UK that are closed to the public.
Oh wow, okay.
You can't go in there.
Only through those specific
because they have, the owner of Viking, his daughter's best friend owns a castle in the UK, and it's the sorry, I don't know much shows very much. I recognize it, but it was a very Downton Abbey. Nah, I can't recall.
I don't watch TV.
Yeah,
so,
so we don't.
that would
Neither of
even
us do.
get totally over my head.
Totally.
Like, I don't watch the news.
But a very famous show, and so
Okay.
you can't have that. If that's bucket list to see that, you cannot do that unless you go through these certain portals. There is always going to be, at the end, we live in a, I don't work for free, and nobody, I don't know anybody that does and calls it work anymore. I think by definition, you have to get paid for it to be work and not hobby. But, so you go the attributable, the value you want to get out of that versus what you can afford versus what you can do. There's a point at which it works. That being said, luxury. When I look at luxury, it doesn't always mean 6-star hotels. Sometimes it is that, there are trips that I would define as luxury, which are, special access in the depths of Africa.
The uniqueness, not the pricing, makes the luxury.
That's right.
I
That's
see.
right. In a world where there's very little left to discover on a scientific level, your discovery becomes access and supply and demand. And, you can go to Trevi Fountain in the middle of Rome, and you can go there at 4 a.m. and there will be a bunch of Instagrammers and influencers sitting out there trying to get that shot with no other. Like, there's no time when you can experience that anymore where you're not bombarded with people. So what is luxury now? It's getting to the places where not everybody else is able to go. It's getting that special access, and it's having the extra thought that goes into things. Having a butler is a pretty good thing. It's a pretty amazing, because you come back and they know your favorite drink, and my clothes are washed and ironed, and this is actually really nice. It lowers the barrier so I can be more immersed in what it is. I took my family on a cruise last September, and for my partner, with our young children, 7 and 4, she said it was 10 nights. She goes, this is the first, since we've had the kids, this is the first true holiday I've had, because I haven't had to worry about all the entertainment, the meals, all the logistics. And so for her, that was the ultimate luxury that let her truly be there, instead of just be the person that's, stepping in and out of her own experience, but always just there to facilitate others. So the word luxury is a really funny one, but you could think of it as experiential deluxe. Rich in experience, as rich as can be in a deluxe setting, where it's just a little bit nicer, a little bit more spacious, and a little bit more about you versus the compromise level.
So the way you explain that, and I'm thinking back about my original question, and like, how do you marry that up with your Buddhistic core as well, and the need for simplicity at some time as well. The way you described the purpose that you are giving to people, it's like Buddhism says, go on a discovery within, and you allow them to go on a discovery without. The outer world discoveries that they would sometimes not even have access to, or the inner world discovery that you might get on a meditation cushion, or when you reflect on some Buddhistic core teachings. And in the case of your partner, it would have also been the travel and the experience that she had was enabling her to be fully present in the moment with you or with the children. And so in today's world, with everything moving so fast and information bombarding us, I think the true luxury can sometimes be what Buddhism teaches, that being in the moment. Is that how I can summarize it? Yeah, it creates space, and also a resolution of loops that within people. A long-standing. I always, when I'm finally done my work after years and years and years, I'm finally going to do the thing. That's a resolution of a life process. Right. And so being able to help somebody actually do that frees them up for. But also it can free them up again to that Buddhist core, as you're saying. It can free them up to actually have the time, because there's nothing like attachment and the weight of dreams unfulfilled. Those can really weigh on people, and that's a whole other journey to get rid of those. Well, what if you can just do it and go, cool, I did it. It's taken care of that. Yeah. Wow. Please. No, you had some more things coming. I guess I just seem to get stuck on the uncertainty. One other element would be that I am also on my journey, and I feel very certain in how I do my business, because I've spent a lot of years doing it and helping people. But I'm also very uncertain for myself in what is right and what is wrong. I keep asking that question. And so if somebody comes and say, I have always wanted to do this, and I want to do, it's like, okay, how can we do it best? It does end up often being luxury for what it gives you. And
I'm not the person to tell them how they should do it, on a moralistic ways or
they do it either way. They just pick another person to help them on that path, probably.
And probably get a worse result because I ask questions, but it's because I try to be the ultimate matchmaker of going, what's really going. So I don't want to be so certain that I'm tainting the discovery of their process.
Wow, like a spiritual guide to travel experiences. What a brand you're building. So if we are now moving even more towards what you are currently the most passionate about, what you are putting all your waking thinking hours into, what should and of course, looking at what you already have shared, this might change. If somebody watches this conversation, time traveling, 5 years from now, you might be already onto the next, run 24.0, evolution-wise. So this is more about, again, this whole concept of these talks is all about, there are two main groups of people that I spent a lot of time with in the last couple of decades. And one is young people. I seem to call them kids, but I'm talking about the sort of 16 to 25 years range, the ones who are entering the workforce and about to find out what can I do with my skills. And then the other main group that I have as clients and that also will watch these conversations is the managers, the CEOs, the hiring responsible person who says, we want to build this cool thing and we need new people. And so to bring a CV in the middle that highlights this, you've been born with that, or maybe have been influenced through your father and then were able to shape these skills over your journey, they can take you in all these different places. And so, yes, what you are doing right now may not be what you will do in 5 years, but it will still carry that Ron signature of, creativity, curiosity, honesty, humor, and love of learning, because you never just stop and say, I've read all the books, I'm done with this. You keep going. So right now, right here, as we are talking, what are you pouring your energy into? What are you crafting your websites and emails and outreaches for? What are you currently all in?
I've got a few because I have trouble only doing one thing. There's so many things that inspire me. I know. So one of them that I'd love to share is recently I had a group of gentlemen, and they're all sort of. So I'm 44 now, and they were all in that sort of 40 to 48-year-old range, and we were off to. I put the trip together for them, and then along the way they went, Ron, you should really come with us. It's going to be a blast. I thought, this sounds good. We went to Sri Lanka and we drove tuk-tuks all through the country. So self-drive, we had a porter for our bags, but we were pretty much just out there on our own, hooning around.
The original boy racers.
That's right. Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I tell you, if you can get a tuk-tuk up on 2 wheels.
No way.
No way. I mean, we could have tried, but we were, it wasn't a 1-day blowout. It was a 10-day blowout. But what we found is that, what we found along the way was that it was supposed to be, hey, a good guy's adventure. But what ended up happening about day 5 is I was sitting around and we had a cameraman and I was gonna, thinking, I'll make a corporate, make a sort of a corporate product out of this, incentive and what have you. But I'm sitting around and it's the end of the day. We had a big day travel and it was like, and we had heat and we had craziness and it was nuts. And I should explain this. It's 4 tuk-tuks, 2 guys per tuk-tuk in convoy style. We're racing, we're making fun of each other. At one point I reached out when we were racing neck and neck, I reached out and actually pushed the tuk-tuk behind me because they don't weigh much, they're little cardboard boxes on wheels. We're having a laugh. And but we're at the end of the day, we're at a really nice resort because, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We need to
it's the spirit of travel, isn't it?
We need to reset for the next hard day. But we're around the pool, we're having a beer, having a laugh and telling stories and making fun of each other at the end of the day. And what was really cool, and I realized in that moment, is that, this is exactly the right crowd and exactly what I needed in my life. And as I sort of had that click that this is exactly what I needed, not just as a professional, not just as a fun trip, but being out with a bunch of guys and having a bit of an adventure. And it wasn't debaucherous like a Vegas, the classic Vegas trip. It was, very rarely were we not all like heading off to our separate rooms at 9 o'clock at night because they were big days. But it was exactly what I needed, that adventure, that camaraderie, that laughter, that all of the responsibilities of being a business owner and a father and just a person with I guess these attachments to what life should look like. And then we put it all to the side and we're there in the destination. And it was great. And as I realized this is exactly what I needed, one of the other guys who traveled a lot, he travels all the time. And he goes, "This is the best trip I've ever been on." And I was like, woo.
Boom.
Yeah.
And your idea was born.
And my idea was born. So I will be. I'm hoping to launch in August. That's my projection. I will be launching a company called the Hard Way Round, and so it'll be a sub brand under Spirit of Travel, but it will be specifically and exclusively for men, and with the intention of it being, a bit dangerous, hard, big days. Vehicle stalls. You're pushing it. You're trying to figure things out. You're having to, how to in this foreign language. Where do I find fuel? All of that stuff.
Yeah.
But clean, but still very much that. But working together as a team to do this, and it's exclusive for men because there's so much for women.
Yeah.
And I think that the needs for guys at that age where there's the impending potential midlife crisis. I like to call it a midlife catalyst opportunity. It's a time of sitting back and going, what am I doing? And rediscovery, exactly. The catalyst is if you ignore it, that you ignore that time and suddenly you've made some mistakes. So this is an opportunity to go and have an adventure with a bunch of guys. And, I sort of say, hey, it's, 40 to 55, but it could be 60, it could be 35. It's not 18, it's not 22, it's not suitable for the real youngies. And it's going to be some particular departures going forward. And we'll, build a community is the plan. And the amount of guys that missed this trip that have come up to me would double the trip over already. So the FOMO is there. The guys are going, that's what I need in my life. And so we're already off to a bit of a start before I have everything ready, but that'll be launching. So stay tuned. Yeah.
And you were wise enough to take someone along to document the journey. So you have some footage you will be sharing soon, I imagine.
Very soon. Very soon.
Right.
We're just on the cutting room floor right now.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah,
This is great.
Yeah. It'll be,
the hard way around.
The hard way around. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
and
not tuk-tuk tiki tour?
No.
That would have been the second runner-up.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's
No,
I really, because even on that trip, our mantra was that hey, it's do hard things. Basically, is what we kept saying over. Let's do hard things, and that became the mantra for the trip for a bunch of us. And but what's really cool, and I think this is something really worth highlighting, is at the end of this trip, we got together a month later, all of us together. We got to lunch and we looked through some of the rough draft and had a bit of fun. Right now, I'm crafting next year's trip for the same guys. So the same group of guys, plus the ones that missed out. And what went from the first trip any of these had done together to now we have the next 3 years planned out already. We're doing Thailand next year. We're doing Borneo the year after. We're doing as a group, which I'll bring a cameraman, and that'll perhaps be the Hard Way Round's next production as well. But what it created such a tight-knit group of guys in that community in a space where men have less and less spend less and less time with their guy friends, actually make less and less friends. It becomes so much about business and that it's like that's that time of just being there and having a laugh. And so we're battling against the tide and
And this group of men, it's growing as in individually and also as a team when we're doing that. You're not just doing the dependency friendships of we're all drinkers and therefore we meet every Friday at the pub.
That's right.
That's like what I often call the avoidance friendships, that you have the same addictions or behaviors that just go about numbing the status quo. So when you and the boys were on your trip, you might have had the same emotion that your partner felt when, there was this cruise and she was like, oh, finally.
Yeah.
I can live, I can experience,
there
I can
go.
Emotion, fully immerse myself into emotion and feeling what is it like to see a new place or see my children playing without me thinking, have I got the lunchboxes ready? Like none of that pressure stuff.
I mean, that's a really good insight, actually. You're right, that's what it was like. For me, it felt like it was down tools for the first time since I had kids, so we're at 8 years.
Use that snippet to promote your
Well, and if you don't mind me saying, if you're sort of a man in that same position, or if you have a man in your life that might be in that same place, just join the community. You don't have to book the trip, but join the community that I'm looking to building. Just get in touch with me because just over time, we're just going to really look at how we can fill that I guess, unaddressed need in men at the early phases, and where we can really have a positive outcome. So. Yeah.
I know someone who runs men's circles as well, and he's a very passionate videographer. He's in the room with us, so take him along next time to do the videos.
Brilliant.
He would be totally down for that.
Brilliant.
I want to do a little backtrack to the creativity aspect again, because you said just now this idea came to you literally in a tuk-tuk. You were just out there doing your thing, and that's when, from a psychological perspective, the brainwaves are in a certain stage that is receptive to inspiration coming from spirit through to you, and you're like, I should do this thing. There are a lot of young people, and also managers, CEOs in their 50s who say, I'm not creative, I don't have imagination, I just do what I know. Do you have any tricks? I mean, you're naturally very high on that quotient of imagination, but there might be times in your life, like you just said, you come out of the shower and you have a billion ideas and you need to talk to your phone to capture them all.
Yeah.
But are there practices or methods that you utilize to really get in a creative space? Or if the opposite is, no, I'll let you riff on that one first. Yeah. Tangent.
I wouldn't say there's any particular practice. I do find that I am constantly have external stimulation all through the day. So it's, like all of us, I spend too much time on my phone. I work a lot of time on the computer, and when I'm leaving the computer, I'm in a meeting with somebody. And so I constantly have things bombarding me. And so what I find is it's almost like a backlog of processing that happens. And so it takes me at least 45 minutes to get to bed, and I'm just, then things start to release a bit. And then I often will wake up early, about 6 in the morning. And that's when I'm just bombarded with thoughts. And so it's like that AI thing I said earlier about capturing those as quickly as I can. And then from there, I'll just tend to sort of riff off of whatever comes up and come back to them and look at them and see. I think that for me, that it's, there's a lot of little data points that end up happening, little bits, and then there's just an aha moment. And that's the magic that I don't know how to say to people. But I will say, however, that I've now been in travel since 2000, if I don't count schooling, which was 2 more years, so 2012. And I worked for almost 6 years for one of the big agencies, and that was a good experience. But what I learned was to do travel in the way that they do travel. Even though along the way I was meeting clients, meeting opportunities where intuition was going, actually, we need to handle this a slightly different way. We need to, this is not addressing the old Pareto principle, 80-20, was saying that this is a big organization, was suitably set up to accommodate 80% of people, and there's 20% of people that weren't best accommodated this way. And they were the people that were going, well, I want deeper, and I want more, and I want tailored, and I want you to understand, I want to be understood, even if they didn't have the words for it. What resonated with them, that and the we're not trying to get away from anything, we're trying to move towards something, and I think that's different. So if I have somebody that calls you up and says, I hate my job, I just need to get away for a week, well, I'm not the person to help you, because that's not my language and that's not where I sit. But when you have that bucket list I said earlier, so sorry, I'm going somewhere here. When I left and I started my own business, what I did though is I basically carbon copied what they did with slight little nuances. Nothing really changed in this opportunity to change because of a risk and an uncertainty and I'm not sure where to go. And what ended up helping me, the best thing that ever happened to my travel business was COVID, because I got smashed so hard. Basically everything stopped. And I went from booking right up to probably, the 20th of March to, what was it? Maybe I'm off a couple days. And then to the next day, starting a refund process. I went from the dream maker to the cancellation and refund guy. And it was 16 months of sitting in that space and being basically miserable, but chasing like $1 million in client money overseas. It
Uncertainty and risk,
totally. But also, I could have just closed up shop, but it's like, no, there's people counting on me, so that's never going to happen. And then resolving that, and then at the end of that, going, I think I'm done with travel for a bit. The world told me yes, but I mean, even for me, burnt out, and my fire went out for a while, and I went and did something radically different. I was in the branding and strategy space, and with it came such a different way of looking at things and such a different like approach to, it's not just marketing, but it's the strategy and the branding and the importance of that but also the power of no, like, starting to say no to people that aren't the right fit, that aren't aligned, so that you are both free to say yes, but also so you look like the right person to say yes to the right people. And what ended up happening there, when I came back to travel, and I missed it in time, is that I had a different skill set, a different way to look at things.
Yeah.
And now when I look at creativity, it's like there's going to be, in many ways, creativity is the recombining of things that are already out there. They say that with art now, right?
Yeah,
There's no new art is ever made anymore. It's all just recombinations.
Everything you ever watched.
So creativity is just unorthodox, in my mind, maybe unorthodox combinations.
Yeah.
And so, I do read a lot. And love doing that, and I do love to have sit around with a bunch of people that are doing different things and just like, oh, well, what do you do, and how does that work, and why do you do that, and asking good questions. I'm kind of thinking as I talk.
I
yeah,
think out loud.
But I do, but does that help at all?
It does,
Yeah.
because it's more about by you sharing your process, or even if it's not a dedicated process, people can empathize or see themselves in your shoes as well. And there might be people out there who have exactly that, where they say, well, it's not this particular process, but I did this and then that led to that.
Yeah.
And then I was realizing, oh, this was actually, COVID for most people was horrible. And for you at that time was surely the worst thing you could have ever thought of. And it turned out to be a catalyst for, going into this other industry sector for a little bit, learning a bunch of different perspectives and skill sets and apps and tools, and making new connections also in that time, because you're influential and chatty by now, of course. And then you meet all these people, and then you have extra knowledge as you decide, I'm going back into my original industry that I love so much, that I can really embody. Now, what really fascinates me, as you were talking throughout the whole journey, from, hey, I helped this guy in Panama to do all the systems, all the structures, all the processes, all the bureaucracy. Now you're talking about, hey, I went into the branding and strategy field for a while. And even throughout the whole travel side of things, you have to be precise. You have to have a calendar and be on time and follow up and doing all those things that require a very conscientious person. And you clearly don't have these in your strengths as such. So when I actually look at the INFP, the P stands for perceiving. The alternative in this type of personality test would be the J for judging, which is the person who has like a checklist and a planner and 3 months in advance, or trips booked with the boys for 3 years in the future. Looking at your CV and hearing your stories almost makes me go, oh wow, he works really hard against his natural archetype. Now, I do not know what your percentages were. This might be just on the cusp of, I want to be spontaneous and go with the flow and maybe do this next Wednesday at 5, maybe not. But do you feel this is one aspect of your industry where you work a bit harder because it's not natural to you? How do I match those? Technically, he doesn't want to have a calendar and he wants spontaneity too, but he actually does all those things and has done for multiple years.
Yeah. So you're right that I'm not strong in that area. And so there is I'm at a point now where I have somebody that's really strong working with me, but there was for a long time I didn't. So somebody who's very organized. So I think it's it's a funny thing because, feeding off of what you said and giving me another way to look at it actually is that when I meet with clients, I get so much out of that first meeting. I work to get, it's like ask the extra question, dig that extra bit deeper, give them some, test them out on this is not a diagnosis. This is an idea of maybe what if we did this. I still need to figure it out, but would that feel right to you? And having that, like, basically in the moment, we're going on a journey and putting it's high pressure in my strength that when I go away and I immediately send a reverse brief to my client.
Dump.
This is everything I've gotten from you. If there's anything that we've missed, please, now's the best time to sing out while it's all just sitting there. And then, generally speaking, I'm good to go on the next step. That being said, the weaknesses are, following, the Dan Martell buy back your time principle and a variety of other ones. The reality is that in order to be the business that I want to be, I do not want there to be a weakness that is a business weakness.
Yeah.
There can be a personal weakness, but that just simply means that I operate here, here, and here, and I have somebody that's the other side that operates here, here, and then just getting that all the way through. And so I'm very much in that refining process now. AI is helping a lot with that because there's a whole lot of time waste that doesn't need to be there. So that's how one of the reasons I'm so into it and passionate about it now is it's an accountability to my vision of myself in my work and how I want to be seen and how I want my clients' experience to be. This becomes a tool that will help move them forward from that first consult where they go, wow, okay, he asked us all the best questions, and like in my strength area, best questions, and got all so much out of us, right through to the moment where they're back from their holiday and we're sitting around having a cup of tea and they're unloading all the exciting things they did, and I can't believe this happened, and did you plan that? It's like, well, maybe I snuck that in, those sorts of things, so that we can go, okay, well, what are we doing next time? Let's keep going. But I need that. That's just something I'm always really aware on, and and you can't ever go, okay, cool, I got it now. It's like, well, hold on a second, how are we going? Is it still smooth? Is it still good? And so I feel like it's, being aware of where your weakness, not feeling like it's just destined to be that way, or I should avert myself from it. You don't have to dive into it, because that's a whole lot of working against yourself, which you've identified. But just simply being really honest with yourself and going, is it a weakness because I haven't developed it, or is it really against my attributes and stuff? And different answers for each one.
That's so true. And like you need awareness for that, just like the book you highly recommend it. And you already identified when the segment in the Human CV that you answered about what would be your ideal partners, personally or professionally. You said strengths that cover my weakness. So there is a need for certain conscientious aspects in business, and certain planning and all those things, and bureaucracy at times, or taxes or admin and all that stuff. And there are people out there who are loving it, fantastic at that. They just fall asleep with a spreadsheet and wake up with a calculator, and they're just loving it. Why not let them do the things that they truly enjoy? And you do the things you truly enjoy. So what would you say to your 20-year-old self, knowing what you know at this point in time? What is a big lesson that you would love younger Ron to know?
Me at 20. At 20, I was back in Saskatoon, my hometown, and I was already at that point in time feeling like I was a bit pigeonholed into a career. So it felt like I hadn't, because I'd done my OE and I came back, I wasn't quite sure what to do career-wise, and I went back to the bar industry, the restaurant industry, where I've been raised, basically. I played it safe. I played in a lane that I thought was kind of in some ways determined. I didn't know what I wanted to do education-wise. And so I felt like that's just the way I had to go. And just going back to the story I said, like at 42, I'm working for a brand agency, something I've never done before. Like the self-limiting beliefs of the young person to think that I had to have that figured out, that being lost was not okay, but not trying to find a compass or a map is not okay. That's the thing that's not okay. We are so powerful and capable, and it was only my own limiting beliefs and my at that time my lack of my ignorance around the fact that, hold on a second, there's a journey starts with one step in any direction I want to go, and it's okay, and it's okay to take 5 steps in the wrong direction. It's just not okay to stand in one's place.
Exactly.
So that would probably be the number one thing. And the only other thing I would say is that everybody is too busy thinking about themselves to think about you at all. Nobody is thinking about you anywhere, everywhere. So go forth and just
do the things.
Just do the things. Do the hard things. The hard things are where the gold is. So those would be 2 things I would say.
It's really well said. And I'm sure that the 20-year-olds that are currently watching this or listening to you will get a lot out of that. If you had a magic wand, what are you currently calling in? Is it more clients for the journeys you offer, or do you envision, would you like to have more collaborators that help you to do these travel experiences? Like, what would be something you want to call in now?
I think Probably in the short to medium term, I am looking for what I want is more people that are resonating with that. Like, there are things you need to do, and they are things that matter, because we've had so much change happen. Some of my clients during COVID that had these trips planned, they were all gone, and they went, well, will I ever get to that place and do that thing again? So I think probably that's a space I want to be in more in the short to medium term. So there's more of that business side. But with the creation then of the hard way around, I also really want that community, and I want to. I want to. There's so many things that I could do, but this one, for me, it resonates with me so much. Of what I needed it, these guys needed it, and it was like, it felt like such a bottle up me that I want to lean into that. Those two areas, I think, are the wand waving at the moment.
So you got two major playgrounds. One is the clients who want to catch up on that bucket list that was put on hold for a while, and then the midlife men who are ready to get out of their comfort zone in an ethical, moralistic, beautifully way, not just crazy things out there that warrant some regrettable text later on.
We don't want. It's not. It's not a feel guilty at the end. It's a feel relief,
feel proud
and connected.
All that.
Yeah.
So beautiful. If and when people want to find you, where do they go? What's the easiest way to connect with you? What's your preferred, communication bubble?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're a LinkedIn native, LinkedIn is a very easy place. That's where we met. That's a very natural one. I guess the places I exist are LinkedIn. Certainly, it's just straight email off my website. My website is, I'm trying to tell stories there as much as possible. So there's a really, there's designed to be inspiration, designed to help people start their journey. So it's a great place to go.
And what's your website again?
spiritoftravel.co.nz.
Very easy to remember.
I do have Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, but that's more my marketing wing and not really where I sit. So you can get a hold of me that way, but the best ways are certainly the others.
Best ways, and then go there.
Great.
Play to the strengths, right?
You got it. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated your openness, your curiosity about all these things that I'm cooking up in my little brain kitchen here. And I can't wait to have this one out in the open and for people to find you and maybe, start on reading a book you recommended, or think about their own relationship between AI and spirituality, or book you for a trip.
Book me for a trip. And if I may just say that as in 2 weeks' time, because it's launching, I have just a little quiz on my website, which is what kind of traveler are you? And it helps break people into different sort of, it really helps them for them archetypes, and it also allows them, if you're traveling with a partner, you could be different archetypes. So it also will talk about how those two both should things to factor in that can really help with the process.
Well done.
So that's something else
by
as well.
the time this video is out, it will be live.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.